types of products, assuming that you pay them off in full. One of the things that you have to keep a close eye on right now is whether if you open these cards, that you pay off the balances before the interest-free period expires, because many of them will actually go back and retroactively assess you interest for the balances, even if you just paid it off right after the balance point was over. So that's something to keep a close eye on as well.
That's sneaky.
Just watch out when you open credit cards.
Especially 28% APR in store brand.
Some of them, by the way, push up north of 30, just so you know.
All right, another way to watch your wallet. Dom Chu, thank you.
All right, just want to wrap up the end of the show, folks. So with the news that's out there, by the way, social media, Twitter, everything else, we've reported on it. Want to be clear what we know, what we don't. AP has reported that a senior U.S. official, here we go. AP has reported that a senior U.S. official has cited a Russian missile potentially landing in Poland. Again, the story's going around like wildfire. There's a lot more that we don't know than we know. And the U.S. government, Morgan, and you, by the way, speaking with them on the phone, they have not confirmed anything.
This is a situation that is being assessed. It is a fluid situation. We do know, based on NBC reporting now, that a senior administration official does say the U.S. They can confirm that something has hit Poland. They do not know what that is. It's not confirmed that it was a Russian missile, and that is why we continue to watch the situation.
A lot we don't know.
Closely.
Closing Bell will pick up the story and more now.
Thanks, Morgan and Brian. Yes, stocks pulling back from their highs in afternoon trading after those reports saying Russian missiles had crossed into Poland, killing 2 people. Welcome, everyone, to Closing Bell. I'm Sarah Eisen. We are still hanging on to a gain. The Dow is up about 90 points, but again, well off the highs, and you can see that dip into the red. On this breaking news, out of Poland, treasuries also were bid up all day long. They get a little bit of a stronger bid on this news, those safe haven bonds. With us now is Atlantic Council President Fred Kemp. He's a CNBC contributor. We turn to him on geopolitical news like this one, Fred. We don't know a lot, whether it was an accident or whether it was purposeful, but we do know that it is going to cause a reaction. What do you make of the news?
So first of all, on the question of accidental or purposeful, at the moment, it looks as though it was accidental. What Polish media have reported, and we have an office in Poland, this is tracking this as well, is that 2 people died Tuesday afternoon Poland time after a projectile struck, apparently a Russian projectile, where grain was drying in a Polish village near the border of Ukraine. Village is Przewodów, Przewodów. This was a day where President Zelensky says that there were 85 missiles launched on Ukraine. The New York Times is reporting 100 missiles. In any case, it's the biggest set of attacks since the beginning of the war. And clearly what Putin is responding to is the fact that the Ukrainians took Kherson, a very key city that he had seized. The Ukrainians are on the march. And on top of that, President Zelensky delivered a peace plan to the G20. And so this is his attack. It does seem as though this was accidental, but whether it was accidental or whether it was intentional, this is going to warrant some response from NATO, because if you strike into NATO territory, that will trigger at least an Article 5 conversation among the NATO Council. Because an attack on one is an attack on all. If it's accidental, obviously proportionate response would be different than if it were intentional. In any case, I think you're going to see a lot more discussion about more and better air defense systems and ground defense systems against these kinds of missiles for Ukraine. So you may see calls for even speedier arms deliveries to Ukraine to defend against this kind of thing.
Talk more about the significance of NATO, because this is the first time, right, if it is confirmed since the war that Russia has launched since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and back in February, that they have fired into a NATO country. So what is the significance of that? What follows?
Well, Sarah, it's hugely significant. President Bush has said that that they will defend every inch of NATO territory. This is obviously part of NATO territory in Poland, right across the border.
Biden, not Bush.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
That's okay.
President
We know
Biden,
who you
I
meant.
just got off a 23-hour plane ride from Bali to Washington, D.C. So anyway, yes, President Biden, said every inch of NATO territory will be defended. There were fears at different times that Poland would be hit because so many of the arms deliveries come from Poland to Ukraine, and that Russia may at some point intentionally hit Poland to kind of shut off those arms deliveries. But that would be such a big risk for Putin to do. So this does look accidental. Accidental or not, I think you have to respond. NATO, we now have 40 countries, 38, 40 countries that under NATO Article 5 are compelled to respond. NATO Article 5 has only ever been triggered once in history, and that was after the 9/11 attacks in New York by NATO countries offering to defend and to help the United States. So if this happened, this would be the second time. With an accidental hit, maybe it doesn't go that far, but I think you can expect NATO to meet tomorrow, if not this evening. And the Polish security, all the top officials in Poland security have been meeting an emergency session this afternoon about what they're going to do. And one also has to see what Poland does. Because one thing is what does NATO do and what does the U.S. do, but if Poland responds as a NATO country and this escalates or expands, and this, of course, has been the worry all along, is that this war does not expand into a war between NATO and Russia. So I think all sides will be careful, including Russia, and certainly the United States will be careful to do whatever it takes to stop the war from expanding while reinforcing Ukraine's defenses.
So you were in Bali. So the world leaders are meeting right now for G20, and it raises a bigger question about what the strategy is from here when it comes to dealing with Russia. I know there was some drama, whether Putin would come, whether Zelensky would come. Either way, here we are several months into this war. Whether this is a purposeful escalation or not, it still is ongoing, and Ukraine is still being hit with barrage of missiles, which has wiped out its electricity today. So what is the strategy? What are the topics of discussion now from the world leaders as far as fighting back and helping Ukraine?
Right. And Sarah, whether or not it was purposeful to hit Poland, it certainly was a purposeful escalation of 8,500 missiles on Ukrainian territory, the biggest escalation since the beginning of the war. And so one has to answer that, too. Foreign Minister Lavrov is in the G20 meetings. Putin is not there. Obviously, there could well be some conversations with Lavrov around this. The meeting with Chinese leader President Xi Jinping and Biden earlier this week was a demonstration by the White House, by President Biden, that the Chinese, they could get the Chinese to warn Putin, even if not so directly, around nuclear missiles. Of course, there are two kinds of escalation. One of them would be to other NATO countries. The other is using a tactical nuke. The worry there was primarily on Ukrainian territory. So the whole conversation around the Ukraine war is what's taking place there. We did a global forum on food security in Bali. That's why I was there. And we wouldn't be talking about food security right now if Putin hadn't weaponized food. He's weaponized energy. And so we're on the edge of a war nobody wants. And at G20, I think there's a lot of talk behind the scenes about how to stop it from escalating and over a period of time move it into a peace process that defends Ukraine's sovereignty, democracy, and independence.
Yeah, one can hope. Fred, we certainly appreciate you coming on with us on this breaking news.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your expertise. Fred Kemp from the Atlantic Council. We've also got a news alert right now on a supplemental budget request from the White House. Kayla Tausche with those details. Kayla.
Sarah, the White House is requesting nearly $50 billion in a forthcoming government spending package to fund COVID-19 and the ongoing war in Ukraine. That